In Knoxville, Tennessee, there is an oasis for nature and nature lovers. Ijam's Nature Center. This small slice of heaven is in the heart of the city and is a perfect spot to observe a natural setting of Tennessee nature. It's also around an hour's drive from the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Ijam's may be an oasis, but it does have its invaders. The crews of Ijam's are constantly battling invasive plants, so much so they don't have the resources to get the upper hand. Enter the Weed Warriors, volunteers that love nature and want to help to protect it. Well, I was able to talk my way into a special occasion and an area where only the Weed Warriors of Ijam's get to see. We are headed to Otter Island to take out as many invasive plants as we can. Join me on this awesome opportunity. Before we head out to the island and get started, we have to get a quick training on equipment use and proper identification of invasive plants. We don't want to take out the wrong ones.
How do you think they got here?
Imported
People?
them? Yeah.
Yeah, lots of different ways. So yeah, when we started overseas shipping, a lot of them came as like packing material before we had like little peanuts to ship things in. Some came as gifts, like Mimosa, that one over there that looks like feathery leaves and has alien-like flowers. That one was given as a gift from King of France. What's his name? King Charles of France. One of the King Charleses gifted it to the United States, and now it's incredibly invasive. But others, like Privet and bush honeysuckle, were introduced for ornamental reasons. So this one was introduced in 1852, Chinese privet, and it was brought over when English landscaping kind of became popular. People wanted to have big hedgerows. You actually still see this in nurseries. People have, anytime you typically see a hedge, it's probably privet. The big problem with these is they're prolific fruit producers, and in the winter when birds don't have a lot of other food, like late fall and winter, it's a good opportunity for them to get it. Unfortunately, it's not very nutritious for them. It's actually just like the only thing they have available, and as these crowd our spaces, it's like all we have left for birds. They need good proteins, good fats. It lacks a lot of that, and it's just really competitive. So this will also spread by root, Chinese privet. So you got a lot of berry production, which will spread it into the woods. Is how we get it in our forest land. But also, if you leave any part of this root in the soil, it's going to come right back. They basically create these links and shoot out. That's why they're so effective at hedgerow growing. So you can take a look at that. Leaves are opposite to each other and oval in shape. So yeah, that's one of our problematic plants. So the main issue is they outcompete our natives for space, light, and nutrients, and they basically completely crowd the understory. So any of our native wildflowers, native ferns, native plants just don't get access to the nutrients because this is like outcompeting them. So oftentimes a lot of people don't understand what the forest is supposed to look like because it's always kind of looked like this big thicketed mess. Like you can't see through. If you look back there, you can't really see through the woods. But you really should be able to see a good mile through the woods, and you usually can't because of all these invasive plants that are out competing. So we're going to work on clearing that out today. The other we're working on, I don't think I have an example of. Maybe over here, let me go see if I've got. So this one's bush honeysuckle. It is tan in color. You can't really see it from here, but its bark is like a light tan color, and if they're bigger, it looks like a cat's been using it as a scratch post for a really long time. This one has leaves that are opposite to each other as well, but they're more teardrop in shape. Both these plants will produce like yellow and white flowers in the spring, and then in the fall, this one produces dark blueberries, that one produces bright red berries. This is very rich in sugar and carbohydrates. This plant was introduced a little differently. I think it was like the late 1880s it started getting spread around in botanical gardens, and then in the 60s through the 1960s through the 1980s, the United States Department of Agriculture started promoting it for wildlife benefit and for erosion control. neither of which it's good for. It's not a good nesting habitat, it's too low to the ground, it makes it easy for predators to get in. Like I said, the fruits are just really high in sugar and carbs. It doesn't give the proteins and fats that our birds need, and it outcompetes all the things that they do need, the things that you find in meadows. A lot of sunflower plants and coneflowers and things like that are really what the birds need to have access to, and they have less and less of that as we have less and less open meadows. So anyway, this one is particularly problematic also because it's allelopathic. So that basically means it's releasing chemicals into the ground, so toxins around, so it doesn't allow other plants to grow, and that's particularly problematic. So you put your wrench at the base of the plant. Can everybody see that? I know it's kind of in there amongst all this vegetation. Yes. Can we all see that clamp? Yeah. And so you just tighten that down. If you don't tighten it down first before you start moving your wrench all the way, you'll just lose some of your leverage. You'll be down here before it engages. And then you want to push away from the plant. A lot of times volunteers will pull like this, and you can do that. You've all signed liability waivers, but it's your body, your choice. But you're putting a lot of pressure on your back and your arms, and if you push away, it's a whole body engagement. Use your legs, your arms. Once I get it low enough, I usually just use my feet because my legs are my strongest, and then pull that out.
Oh wow.
So it's just giving you leverage to uproot. It's like weeding your grandma's garden on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
After we are all trained up, we load the boat and head out to Otter Island.
But that's not the.
Once we get there, we are immediately greeted by a large invasive mimosa tree.
Oh, that's a good question. Asia, they're China.
The main invasives that we're targeting today are Chinese privet, mimosa, bush honeysuckle, and English ivy. Basically, if it's invasive and we can properly identify it, we can remove it.
Change it into application.
Working on the vine.
I have the overleaf, so you'll see tons of privet. And these little guys, these are mimosa, they're also yeah, and this is a briar. It is native, but you know, you can step on those. And the poison ivy's native, but the English ivy, of course, needs to go. Somebody said that's a honeysuckle. That's a bush honeysuckle. That's a regrowth from last year. So we can't really pull it off because it's stuck to the stump, but we'll have to cut them and then spray them.
It's a lot of hard work, cutting and pulling, but once the plant is removed, we stack them into these piles.
Brush piles like that, all kinds of critters like to use those spaces, so it's good habitat while it biodegrades, but then we do have to monitor it to make sure that it doesn't reestablish.
And after a hot Tennessee morning of cutting, pulling, spraying, and stacking invasive plants, who wouldn't need a cold beer? Enter another hero, the owners of ELST Brewing.
Welcome to ELST. I'm Dan Leonard, production manager and one of the brewers here. ELST was a project that was started with 4 friends. I was a home brewer, and 2 other guys on my street kept seeing my garage door open and would come by for a couple beers and started helping me make beer over time and could see me brewing, and he had actually had brewing experience in New Mexico. So over the course of a couple years, we pulled everything together and opened our own brewery here in Knoxville. ELST means the area of sanctuary around a monastery. That is a reference we found on Wikipedia when we were looking up words that had to do with monasteries and beer. We originally wanted to open as Knoxville's Belgian-focused brewery. Over time, our Belgians hasn't been as popular as other beers, but we still try to keep some on all the time. In fact, one of our mainstays, ELST Brown, is actually a Belgian double recipe that was given to me when I was in brew school. At Elsewhere, our tap room, we do trivia every Monday night, and we also do a musical-based trivia on Wednesday nights. So we also have a cornhole league that comes on Monday nights. So Monday nights are one of the craziest here. So we have a barrel program here at ELST. We get barrels from many different places. Sometimes we get them from a liquor store who's gotten a special barrel of a specific liquor, and then they'll give it to us after their promotion for us to use for a beer. We also just buy barrels as they're available to us. Right now we have rum barrels, we have some whiskey barrels, we've had tequila barrels in the past, and right now I also even have a couple bourbon maple syrup barrels. So they were originally a bourbon barrel that had maple syrup aged in it for I think 16 months, and then emptied to some extent. There's still quite a bit of syrup in the barrels when we got them. And we put a Belgian double into one of them and our American stout into another one. That beer, the American stout, was originally known as the rye stout. And it did not get adopted well into the market. And we even had a bartender who worked in our tap room and another bar in town and said to me, "Oh, I really wish I had a good stout that I could sell." I said, "What's wrong with our stout? Do you not like it?" She said, "No, I love it, but nobody's gonna buy it when it's named rye stout." So we just changed the name from rye to American, and that week we got twice as many orders for it. Nothing else had changed, just the name. And then everybody picked, or several people picked it up right away, and it's had much better sales ever since. So we get some of our malt from Carolina Malt House, who's a newer malt house over in North Carolina, and they get most of their grain. I believe it's within 25 miles of the malt house. So it's all hyper local to there. There's a couple products that don't come from there. One specifically is a 2-row barley that's grown in Cotton County, Tennessee. So it's actually a Tennessee grown 2-row, and we use that in a lot of beers. It is one of the lightest 2-rows, and it's got this really nice sweet grassiness. So it's a really good base malt to do in a lighter IPA, because it'll help offset a little of the bitterness and give you some malt character that's not overwhelming without having to use a crystal or something like that. And it ends up being each one of my very favorite malts grown in Tennessee. Yeah, what else? Favorite beers? Oh man, that's tough. Well, one of our beers is the vanilla milkshake. It's a wheat beer made with oats and lactose and then vanilla extract, and lower gravity. It's a light beer. It's not a dark beer. So it's 4.5% and it's very light. And it's probably my favorite beer. It's sweet. I have a huge sweet tooth. So I mean that recipe is 7 years old. Probably has never been done the same way more than 2 or 3 times without an iterative change to try to improve it.
Final thoughts?
Drink some good beer. You know, whatever beer you like, drink it. Don't worry about if someone says, "Oh, you shouldn't drink a light beer. You should drink something different." Find the beers you like and drink a lot of them. What else?
What else?
The amount of stupid puns you can do is amazing. Else?